Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about specifically with regards to patient health, well-being, left, right brain is the importance of sleep. So I've called this sleep and detoxification, but it's a bit more of a generalized thing so that people understand a little bit more about sleep. The fact that it's technically 5 phases. You've got awake, you've got what's called REM phase, and you've got phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, phase 1 and 2 are what we'd consider the light sleep cycle. So that's really a transition phase. It's not really deep. It's not really in REM. It's the moment where you transition between them. And you probably spend about half of your actual sleep time in stage 1 and 2 as you go up and down, because sleep itself is a cycle. It's a sinusoidal wave, and it's got up and down. And the whole point of sleep is that the more you do these sinusoidal waves and we keep it well regulated, the better the likely outcome of you healing, of your brain doing well, of you actually not aging poorly. Because the studies on geriatric people and people who have health crises and elder age show that they have very dysregulated sleep cycles and get very little REM and very little deep sleep, but they have quite a lot of somnolescence. So they go, just have a little nap now. And you'll see them in the old folks' homes, and they're chronically sleepy, and they just have naps all over the place, but they're not getting long enough blocks of appropriate sleep cycle to actually detox their brain, detox their emotive system, and actually repair efficiently. So
with the sinusoidal wave of the sleep cycle, what's your ideal like peak to peak wavelength?
Okay, so the sleep cycle theoretically, peak to peak, is 90 to 120 minutes. Now, it's not exact because everyone's is going to be slightly different, but it's generally about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And we're meant to do, in theory, somewhere between 4 and 5 sleep cycles a night to get the best long-term health and well-being. And so, again, the deep sleep cycle is phases 3 and 4, and they are, again, clustered together, and they are part of the wave itself. And again, what I want people understanding is, because we really need deep sleep and we really need REM sleep, because they're where we do our biggest tissue repair, brain repair. Light sleep is enough to keep you alive, okay? So we know that if you don't sleep, you will die. Full stop. Okay. We know that if you don't sleep and we don't get REM sleep, you can basically cause people to become neurocognitively maladapted, which is a polite way of saying you go mad. And this is where there's some really interesting thoughts on torture. So sleep deprivation is an acceptable form of torture because it leaves no marks on the person. It's not like, waterboarding or punching them or anything like that. But we know that it will crack someone's personality and break them down. And that's why it's been used in the past. Now, whether it's used, I don't know, because I'm not in that industry. But we know that if I disrupt your sleep enough for a long enough period of time, I can get you to comply with anything I want. Okay. And that's a really interesting point, because it's in a gray area as to whether it's actually torture or not torture. But my figuring is it's probably torture, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't use it.
Anyway. I mean, after having 2 kids and several rounds of not sleeping, it's torture. It's torture.
Yeah. So light sleep's enough to keep you alive, but you need these deep sleep and REM sleep to actually keep things working properly. So again, deep sleep focuses on the restoration of the body. Now, this is particularly important when we're talking about the anti-inflammatory cascades. So you don't get enough deep sleep, you cannot keep those Peyer's patches in your gut working effectively. Okay? You don't release enough growth hormone, and you don't keep the blood flowing to your tissue, so you get potential damage from hypoxia. Now, think of a dysregulation that occurs to a lot of people that could cause you to not get good deep sleep.
Dysregulates stress.
Well, stress, think more big picture. It's a form of stress that will cause you to not sleep well. Apnea, snoring. Okay? So if you don't breathe well because you're in an apneic stage, your excess body fat, you've got a lot more weight here, you've got a lot more weight around the diaphragm, etc., you might not breathe well. If you're tongue-tied, you might not breathe well. And so what will occur is that as you go into these deep states of sleep and you get more softening of the muscles, your airway might block, right? So what the body does is it gives you a squirt of adrenaline and cortisol to tighten up the muscles of the airway to pull the tongue out of the throat. Well, that's going to dysregulate your sleep cycle, isn't it? The more you fragment it, the more personality disorder, the more healing disorder, the more quickly you age. So what's also really important about deep sleep is that this is when the glymphatic tissue in the brain actually kicks into gear, and you squeeze your brain to get rid of all the waste product in it. And that's one of the most fascinating things I've learned about in the last couple of years, is that the brain has its own lymphatic tissue called the glymphatics, and it's what we use to actually squeeze the cells, and it actually expands and squishes the brain cells to actually make channels to drain the stuff out of it. Now, if you don't get enough deep sleep, you get to maintain the waste material. Now, kind of think about that as like your sewage system overflowing, and you have to work in your office with the toilet overflowing. That's not going to be a good work environment, is it? And so metabolic waste, such as, lactic acid staying in your brain, is going to create brain fog. And again, if you then extrapolate that sideways to what we were just talking about, not enough deep sleep, not enough tissue repair is likely to leave you in a state where you can't regulate your healing and keep that gut lining intact. So again, I just think it ties in really quite effectively. Now, again, REM sleep is the other most important thing. So REM stands for rapid eye movement. And again, we call the other 4 or 5 stages, awake, 1, 2, 3, 4, as non-REM sleep. So rapid eye movement sleep, your body is quite paralyzed, and you have these very rapid movements, which is like a nystagmus. It's like a fluttering of the actual eyeball rocking up and down underneath the lid. Kind of creepy. And REM is suggested to be the phase where you're basically cleaning out the brain and de-inflaming your personality. And without it, we don't consolidate memory, and we don't keep our personality actually working well, and we can become unhinged. Without enough REM sleep, given a long enough period of time, you can become quite psychotic. You can hallucinate. You can kind of become delirious without an actual sickness, without an infection, etc. So the combination of dysregulated deep sleep, dysregulated REM sleep will cause an inflammatory cascade in the brain, shifting your balance more towards a hyperimmune activated brain immune system, which will dysregulate the vagus nerve, leading to issues. So as you can see, REM increases respiration, increases heart rate, temperature regulation is switched off. Well, that all sounds literally like someone in an infectious cycle, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Delirium, vivid dreams may occur, body becomes immobile, but really important for this consolidating memory and pruning pathways in the brain to make kind of connections occur. So if we don't get enough of this, we can't make strong connections, we can't consolidate learning, and we ourselves lose grip on our reality, time, position, space, and consciousness. So from that perspective, I think is a really important thing for people to understand the importance of actually getting enough sleep. Because if you're not getting enough sleep and you're not getting good quality sleep, your ability to shut inflammation down and keep your consciousness integrated becomes highly problematic.
Now, so brain detox in deep sleep, brain repair in REM sleep.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Gotcha.
Circadian rhythm becomes a big touch point here. And how much deep sleep, how much REM, how much quality of sleep is very distinctly regulated by the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm, your light dark cycles, I think is probably something that people can make some changes to. Because, too much blue light, such as from screens in the later part of the day in the evening, will keep your melatonin level being suppressed and keep your alertness level up far too high. And this is where the idea of red lenses in the evening and cell phone companies have, of course, started bringing dark mode to their screens, as Apple, for instance, has with the computer. And there's products like Lux, F.Lux. You can get that as a safe download, and it'll take the color out of your screen. So there's plenty of things you can do, and you need to get out in the sun and actually get sunlight on your eyes when you can, like first thing in the morning, midday, afternoon, and darkness, to help set that rhythm. Now, again, if there's problems with that, say you live in the deep northern hemisphere or deep Tasmania, and you're not getting at certain times of year good sunlight, like deep in the middle of the winter in Tasmania, I'm figuring they probably don't get an awful lot of sunshine hours. They might, but I've never been there, so I'm guesstimating. But this is where you can use things like melatonin, and melatonin is quite safe for short-term periods of time. Chronic use will, of course, potentially, because it's a feedback mechanism, cause some personality disorder. It's an endpoint. So if you keep putting stacks and stacks of it in without having made it through serotonin first, the brain won't make serotonin, and that could lead to depression. Not enough sunshine hours.
Is there a rough figure for the amount of time that it's okay to take for before it does have a feedback impact, and then the dosage as well?
So I tend to recommend 3 milligram doses if people are using it. It's nice and safe at that moment. There's very little real risk, but you use it for 12 weeks at a time, and then trying to have a layoff, etc. That'll get you through a winter phase or a sleep dysregulated stage and get you back into a sleep cycle, and then you kind of ease off from that whole thing. Now, again, there's some other benefits to melatonin. Currently, it's shown to be particularly helpful at controlling viral infections, and it's suggested to be quite helpful, especially for female. And I'm saying females because it seems to be a greater preponderance towards breast cancer in females than males. Males can get breast cancer too, but generally speaking, most of the candidates that I've ever met, I've never met a male with breast cancer, regardless of the fact that I know they can get it. Melatonin is shown to be helpful at decreasing the risk of breast cancer.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I don't think I can. So really quite useful at that moment in time. Now, sleep itself is particularly important for a bunch of rhythms. And when you sleep, although I've said, it's good for memory and it's good for your personality and etc., it's a bit bigger than that. And the circadian cycle, and melatonin specifically helping regulate that, peaks to reset your hormonal release. So if you're not getting enough deep and good quality sleep, and you're getting excessive blue light, you don't stimulate the release of your estrogen stimulators, testosterone stimulators, growth hormone stimulators, etc. So those hormonal cycles coming from the pituitary and hypothalamus don't get released at the right time or in the right quantity, because the last amount of blue light seen at night, so whenever that last amount is, it's 2 hours before you start releasing melatonin into the system. So it's a big shift. So if you're up till 10 o'clock on your phone, and it's midnight before you're releasing it, and then you start your natural sleep rhythm. So you're not likely to be getting quite enough sleep at that moment. So again, sleep in the nervous system, there's a big link between the amount of sleep that you're getting and the neuroendocrine function is really what I'm trying to say. Now, again, there's a bunch of herbs, including withania, hops, that we can use to actually try and calm things down. Lemon balm's another one.
Wait, hops? As in have a beer?
No, don't have a beer. But that's, sorry.
But he said have a beer.
Not good. That's a definite no-no for the people out there. I know that lots of people will think, oh, but I relax when I have a drink. Yeah. But as we've mentioned before, alcohol dysregulates the quality of your sleep. If you have one standard drink, it'll affect just tonight. If you have more than 2 standard drinks, it'll affect tonight and tomorrow night without you having any more alcohol. So that's quite a big thing. I think the B vitamins and taurine are really quite important at this moment. Taurine's a really important detoxification nutrient and is also shown to be really helpful at regulating migraine. So if there's any migraineurs out there who aren't taking a little bit of taurine, maybe that's something to consider. It's a nice, safe amino acid, really can't harm you. So worth a try.
So this is all the supplements that we look at for slowing down the brain, being cofactors for GABA production, glutamate, B6, taurine, and then what with withania?
Withania is an adaptogenic herb that's shown to help the adrenal function. Basically, it puts a lid on it. It stops you getting too high, stops you getting too low. It just kind of hugs you in the middle. It's really good.
Okay.
Gotcha. Nice and safe. Long history of safety. There's basically, while there's no risk, it's a very low risk herb that I could feel comfortable if you went and bought Fusion withania over the counter, unless you had an allergy, it'd be next to impossible to get into trouble taking it at that moment. So, everyone needs to assess their situation and talk to, seek some medical advice, get a practitioner to guide you. But in general, it's nice and safe like that.
Gotcha.
Sleep and inflammation. And I've got a really cool kind of concept to show us. I've got a video that I'm going to play on one of our later things about pain specifically making you stupid. But inflammation is shown to fundamentally decrease your ability to get into sleep cycles. So the more inflammation running through the system, and this is again one of those links back to the gut, is that if those inflammatory responses from the Peyer's patches are going off, setting off cascades, your nervous system via the vagus nerve reads it and it signals back to the brain there's trouble in paradise, and that helps lower your capacity to get into sleep. It makes it harder for you to shut down because there's parts of the nervous system, as I'm sure you're most well aware and can describe in better detail than I can, that keep you alert when the pain level is too high, because it's part and parcel of your archaic threat response. It's designed that if something's biting you on the leg, it needs to wake you up because that threat could end your life. And so again, cytokines and immune cells being out of balance with this hemispheristic problem creates disturbances to sleep. And so again, there's a bunch of supplements that we can utilize. There's a bunch of things that we can utilize to actually help shut down the inflammatory cascade. I've listed a few of them here. I really like things like sulforaphane, curcumin, allantosterols, glutamine, quercetin. All of these happen to have a really positive neuro-anti-inflammatory effect. They also have a very strong antiviral, antimicrobial effect at this moment. So again, really happy with all of them. Sulforaphane and curcumin are also shown to help regulate liver detoxification enzymes. So not only do they suppress inflammation in the system, they help get the garbage out, which again, really important, especially if you're having any dysfunction in the sleep cycles.
So in your experience, if I've got a sleep issue, what would be some of the symptoms that would go together with my sleep being disturbed because of an inflammatory cycle versus my sleep being disturbed because of a deficiency in GABA production?
Oh,
Or is it, how do you differentiate between, so if I'm trying to fix my sleep and I want to know, do I supplement with GABA or do I supplement with anti-inflammatories? What makes you go down one path and not the other?
So some of the things we might look at is what are anxiety levels like, for instance, and we can do psychosocial measurements and profiling to go, well, yeah, I've got 9 out of 10 symptoms for anxiety, and I've only got 2 out of 10 symptoms for pain. I don't have any redness. I don't have any temperature. I haven't got any sore spots. Physically, I feel quite good to touch. Nothing's really out of balance, but I can't really calm myself down for no reason. I know something bad's going to occur. We look at it from those sorts of patterns and go, right, maybe that's the right way to go. On the flip side, if
or GABA supplementation,
you'd go the GABA route at that moment. If you had no real anxiety, you were chill, there was no neurocognitive disenhancement for you, but you had swollen red knuckles or swollen knee and you had red streaking, or you were having cramping pain and, regular loose bowel motion or smelly flatulence, etc. Those might be routes to think, okay, I need to really try and shut this inflammatory cascade down. A really good one to think about would be, you go to the gym, you do your normal workout, but you, instead of like really kind of recovering the next day or the day after, you're in trouble kind of 3 days after. You're still kind of sore, you're not recovered from it. That would be more of this interleukin-6 inflammatory delayed onset muscle soreness, which could be affecting your sleep cycle that way. And of course, the more affected your sleep cycle is, the more you don't heal and repair. So the more inflammation. And so the real trouble is you could start from an interleukin-6, a GABA anxiety, can't calm my brain down to go to sleep sort of problem, and morph into this interleukin-6 inflammatory cascade and have both, and doing one or other still won't fully affect. And what I really want people to think about, which is why we've kind of looked at both of these things as they seem separate. One's talking about gut bacteria and the immune system here, and the other's kind of sleep. But the human being is an integrated organism, and it requires everything to kind of work at the same time. And the mind-brain-body interface can't be separated. So every time we look at someone, you've really got to be thinking about, it's not just a gut problem and it's not just a brain nervous system problem, it's a both. And we need to do a bit of both things from both ends. I've seen very few things that are one or the other. Like everything affects everything. Now, sometimes it's just very clearly we're going to attack it from a brain-based perspective. And sometimes it's very much a biochemistry, resource management, nutritional perspective. And again, if you think on it, with that patient you were talking about with the gluten and the dairy sort of responses, when we feed them the wrong things, they can become very anxious, they can become very inflamed, and they become more sideways shifted because the biochemistry of that inflammatory cascade still has adrenaline, still has cortisol going on, which causes the brain to alter its perspective and drives this inflammatory anxiety response, which the brain then misinterprets as there must be a threat, which then drives a further response, which then drives more inflammation. And it's these wheels just always going around and around. So you kind of have to do a bit of both at the same time. Now, again, I think it's important for people to understand that in different aspects, like traditional Chinese medicine, the body has meridian times for certain things to occur. And so the most common time that I tend to find people are waking up is somewhere between about 1 and 3 a.m. Now, there's a bunch of possible reasons, and they'll say, oh, well, I woke up because I needed to pee. Well, the answer is probably a bit more simplistic. You woke up and therefore decided you needed to pee. If you'd been sleeping properly, you shouldn't have woken up. Now, generally, what we're kind of thinking about is around that 3 a.m. is when the cortisol starts to come in because you're running out of energy because it's so far from your last meal. And what's meant to occur is you start releasing cortisol to stimulate gluconeogenesis to keep your nervous system being fed. So if you have a problematic liver, some fatty liver disease for whatever reason, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic, you might not produce energy very efficiently, which is going to kick you out of your sleep because it costs you less to be awake than it does to be asleep at that particular moment. So it's just something to think about. So if we've not got a good functioning detoxification profile, then your sleep may not be as well regulated as we'd like as well. And so again, cysteine, N-acetylcysteine is one of my absolute favorites, along with glutamine and glycine, because these help produce glutathione in the body. And glutathione is your most used antioxidant, single antioxidant for everything. Again, I really like the nutraceuticals, sulforaphane, curcumin, milk thistle. My favorite is still sulforaphane, because curcumin, while a really, really positive anti-inflammatory with good detox pathways, can bind up iron. So if you had someone who happens to have hemochromatosis, they've got excess iron, then curcumin's the right way to go. But if you've got someone who's got really heavy periods and very low iron levels, then curcumin no, and you'd use the sulforaphane or milk thistle at that moment.
Interesting.
Yeah. B vitamins for everything, whether it's stress, whether it's poor healing. There's never a moment not to in our modern era. I shouldn't say that. There's always some potential for a moment, but generally speaking, B vitamins are very underdone. Most people are so stressed in their current lifestyles that they're peeing out their B vitamins at a rate of knots. So I think that's an important thing to be trying to keep more going into the average person, as it turns out. Now, again, the whole vagus nerve is essential for parasympathetic nervous system function, the rest digest system. Now, again, the dominant slow wave sleep cycles are meant to be helping clean out the digestive system, calm that gut activated lymphoid system, and detox the gut and get the garbage out of it, which is also when you do the movement of stuff through the bowel to the bottom end, and we start kind of getting into the elimination sides of things. If you don't have enough bile, you don't do so well. And so bile, choline's a really important key element for the production of bile. If you don't have enough choline, you're not going to do at all well at that moment. Again, as you'll note, glutamine strongly comes in here, and zinc comes in here as well. So there's a bit of a theme. These are things that help in so many different areas. Sleep, detoxification, it helps with anti-inflammatory and a massive amount of other things. Those are simple nutrients that I would like most people starting to get into. And again, corn silk's also a really nice sleep-inducing anti-inflammatory herb. I haven't used Buchu so much, but the data showed that I was looking at that it was quite useful for people.
Interesting.
And these are some references that I used in case people want to look it up a bit further. So I'm sort of hoping we wove those two things together. If you don't sleep and your environment is stressful, it's going to create brain imbalance, which then leads to dysregulation in the gut, driving autoimmune activation and this imbalanced Th1, Th2, and dysregulation of T regulatory cells. Now, you can also get it from the other way, where we get problems in the gut because of poor bacteria or viral load, creating hyperactivation of those sentinel activities, driving antibody production, which then creates the dysregulation due to inflammation going back to the brain, shifting your balance anyway. So you can get to the same problem from two different angles. We need to look at the person as a whole to try and actually, make sure that we've got all our bases covered. That's kind of my take-home message for today.
It's a good message. I think potentially we should have a conversation about the neurological sort of brain hacking tricks that people can use at home to help prime their brain towards sleep, whether we activities to promote inhibitory pathways and all the other good things.
Cool.
Save that for another day.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Beautiful, mate. That was good.
I'm glad you liked it. I had fun pulling the stuff together for it anyway.
Beautiful. All right. Well, if that's it, then speak to you next time.
I look forward to it. You guys all have a wonderful day out there. Bye for now.